House Democrats are investigating the Trump administration over an alleged deal to transfer nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah Cummings says whistleblowers have come forward to say the administration is trying to rush the deal through under the influence of private companies, which could see a massive profit. They say the materials are highly sensitive and could destabilize the Middle East. The U.S., China, and Russia are on a list to bid for nuclear power projects in Saudi Arabia. CBS News Capitol Hill producer Rebecca Kaplan is following this story from Washington. Rebecca, this is a fascinating story. What more can you tell us about this report from the House Oversight Committee and explain Michael Flynn's connection to it?
Well, Vlad, this report centers on, as you mentioned, accounts from whistleblowers to the House Oversight Committee that they have been gathering. And what's interesting here is this is a concern that Elijah Cummings, the chairman of the committee, raised last year during the last Congress. But now that he is actually in the power as chairman, can subpoena documents, can request people come before the committee, a power he did not previously have. They are launching a much fuller investigation into what happened. And in particular, they're focusing on the early months of the Trump administration, when pretty much right from the get-go, there were top officials pushing through this plan. They were calling it a Marshall Project for the Middle East, hearkening back to the Marshall Project, which rebuilt Europe after World War II. The idea was to build a number of power plants across the Middle East, and you had a number of top Trump officials pushing for this plan. Of course, the most well-known name associated with all of this is Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor, who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian officials back in December 2017. He had been working on this project before he even came to the administration as a consultant for one of the subsidiaries of IP3, this private company that was working to build these power plants. So Flynn was one of these people who was pushing for this plan. He started this work before he even came into the Trump orbit, before he started serving as an advisor to the campaign, then the transition, and then officially in his capacity as a national security advisor. And one interesting other person that this report points to is Tom Barrack, who chaired the president's inaugural committee. Documents from these whistleblowers show that Mr. Barrack was being suggested as the person to kind of run point on this effort to build power plants in the Middle East. There's also questions, though, about whether he was exploring potential investments in companies that help provide this, would have provided this technology to Saudi Arabia, and whether that created a potential financial conflict of interest for both of those people.
That was going to be my next question, Rebecca. Could there have been a conflict of interest? Could, in fact, some of the technology that they were seeking to work with the Saudis on be sensitive and perhaps not technology that you would want to share with a foreign power?
Well, the way that transfer of this important nuclear technology works is that it has to be approved by Congress under the Atomic Energy Act. So all of this information has to be given to Congress. They have to be allowed to vet it before it goes forward. And the concern here that was being raised by these whistleblowers inside the administration was that the administration was pushing forward with this plan to sell this technology, give this nuclear technology to the Middle East without actually going through the proper channels, seeking the correct approval and making sure that it didn't fall into the wrong hands, or taking these extra steps to protect U.S. national security in this potential transfer.
So given that this all comes at a very sensitive time when lawmakers of both parties are, concerned over the Trump administration's reluctance to punish the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, what are the plans going forward? Does the president still hope to share this technology with Saudi Arabia, to bid for it?
Well, right now, the committee says part of the reason it's so important to look into what's going on is that they believe that there are still active efforts to transfer some of this nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. In particular, the report points to a February 12th meeting between the administration. They said there was a meeting with private developers, including IP3, the company behind this potential nuclear transfer. And that's why they say it's so important to keep looking into this issue, even though Flynn has since left the administration. And of course, this comes as Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, is preparing to head to the Middle East next week for a trip. And as you mentioned, Vlad, there is a lot of concern right now on Capitol Hill about the administration's relationship with Saudi Arabia. This has really been highlighted by the administration's reluctance to point fingers at the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist, last year. And that has raised a lot of skepticism, rather really unusual on Capitol Hill, even among Republicans of the administration. And they're pushing for further action to really look into the administration's ties to the region.
And one last question, Rebecca, on what's possible from Elijah Cummings. Could the House Oversight Committee put the brakes on this? I mean, I know they want to investigate. I know they have a lot of questions, but could they put the brakes on even sharing this technology moving forward?
That's not really where this committee is going to come into play with that potential transfer. What they are going to do is attempt to shine a light on all this information. So they said, as of today, they're going to be launching this full-scale investigation. They're going to be seeking further documents, further interviews with people involved with this plan, people in the administration, even potentially people who have left the administration. And so I think their hope is that by highlighting what is going on here and bringing more of this to light, casting doubt about who stood to benefit financially from a potential sale of this technology to Saudi Arabia, that they can help build further support in Congress to block it if it does go forward, which we are not at that point yet.
All right, so we understand House Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah Cummings will be hoping to shed some light on this deal with the American people. We thank you, Rebecca, for shedding some light on all that is happening on Capitol Hill, as you always do. We appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Thank you.